Mr. Chairman, Director General, the Vice Mayor of the City of The Hague, Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would first like to thank Ambassador Dr. Hadi Farajvan, who at the time of my nomination, he in fact nominated me when he was the head of the National Authority of the Islamic Republic of Iran. He is not with us today because now he is Ambassador of the Islamic Republic in Nairobi. I would also like to thank Ambassador Dr. Jahangiri, the head of the delegates and ambassador to the Netherlands. And I would also like my special thanks to the Director General and Mark Alban, the Director of the International and Assistant Branch. And I would also like to thank my kind wife for her constant support. And also, she is professor of children's dentistry, but she was, in fact, encouraged me to do more work for the chemical war gas victim. And also my daughter, Dr. Bita Balali-Mood, who is chemist, and she has also encouraged me over the past few years and contributed to two of my books that published by Springer. One is on organophosphorus compound. The name of the book is Basic and Clinical Toxicology of Organophosphorus Compound. It was published in 2014. The other one is Basic and Clinical Toxicology of Sulfur Mustard, which is now under publication. It will come out in January 2016. At last but not the least, I would like to thank Dr. Shahryar Khateri, who is one of the, in fact, chemical veterans. I know him when he was in the war as a medical student and then as the intern, and then joined my research group, and he did PhD under my supervision in Newcastle University as I'm visiting professor in Newcastle University. I'm glad that he is now working with OPCW as the Senior Assistant and Protection Officer. And he made a great contribution for the book launched at lunchtime at 1:30. And in fact, that is, as the Director General mentioned, is a practical guide for the treatment of chemical war gas victims. So I was really a lecturer in Edinburgh University in 1981-82 when the war started between Iraq and Iran. And it was on the news that possible chemical war gas attack against the Iranian troops. So not only me, my wife was feeling so guilty, so we decided to go back home in 1982 when a lot of medical doctors, not only the Western educated doctors, even the Iranian educated medical doctors are leaving the country at the time because of the war, and the medical doctors later on were not allowed to leave the country because to help the war gas victim and also all war victims. So I'm glad that we returned. The reason I returned was because of the chemical war gas attack mainly, and I'm glad to help the chemical war gas victims now for 33 years. And I had a very warm welcome by the Chancellor of Mashhad University, the Dean of Medical School, and the Director of Medical Hospital the time I returned home in 1982. They supported me by donation a new building for the toxicology ward. and then later on to equip my toxicology laboratory that I had already established in that hospital in 1972. In 1983, in April 1983, the first International Congress of Medicine was held in Tehran. Ayatollah Khamenei at the time was the president of Iran, now is the leader. In his opening speech, he warned that it is very likely that the Iraqi army use chemical weapons against our troops or maybe even the civilian. So that was during that Congress that we formed. I was the only medical toxicologist at that time because that was the main reason I returned home. So since then, I have tried to make it so short. I've tried to do teaching research mainly on chemical war gas victims, not only in my university, in Tehran University, in some other universities, Shiraz, Isfahan, Kerman, and Tabriz. So we had a from August 1983, we had a very difficult time because at the beginning, most of the chemical war gas victims referred from the war zone to my hospital. And I remember in one night, that was in March, 18 March 1984, more than 200 chemical war gas victims brought to Mashhad airport. We had a very hard time, and we formed a we already formed, in fact, a medical committee for the treatment of chemical war gas victims. So we were able to manage, and I'm glad that most of those victims survived. Just 3 patients died on the 2nd week after exposure. So I'm glad that most of the patients who survived from the nerve agents, because during the time, during chemical war gas attack, sulfur mustard or mustard gas were used several times between 1983 and 1988. The nerve agents Tabun and sarin were used heavily, Tabun in Majnun Island, an island in the border of Iran and Iraq, and sarin in Halabja massacre, as you all heard about it. So most of my research since the chemical war gas attack focused on the both experimental and clinical aspects of chemical warfare agents. I have collaborated with WHO since 1986 and with OPCW since its establishment, but from 2004, I was vice chairman of the Scientific Advisory Board for almost 9 years. Usually the term of the SAB member is 2 terms for each 3 years, for 6 years. But in my case, there was an exception. So I served nearly 9 years. And even since there, when the new Director General, Ambassador Uzunku, was appointed, he asked me to continue my collaboration with OPCW. And I've done my best since then. And one of the outcomes is the book, the guidebook that we already mentioned. So I have now got a special clinic, a private clinic, in fact, just for the Iranian chemical war gas victims. Without private clinic, but without charging. Even sometimes my wife, who has got a very good private clinic, and sometimes my colleague was telling me that she is the one making money in her private clinic, and you are the one to spend the money in international medical meetings, but perhaps they were right. Okay, now I ask her, you donate to some charities. The best charity is the chemical war gas victims. Why not charity to these veterans, to these chemical war gas victims? She kindly agreed. And since about, say, 6 years ago, we have provided, the expensive medication like Seretide spray by GSK or some other thing. And even last year, when Dr. Bob Matthew, the winner of the award last year, right after his award, I congratulated him, and then he wrote back to me that I would like to, because you said that despite the help of the government, these chemical war gas victims have some difficulties, particularly for the expensive medications made in Europe or US. So, but finally, they have made a better decision to spend that donation for the book that launched after lunch. Now I'm going to spend nearly all my award budget for not only my patients, for all chemical war gas victims of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I would like to thank you for your kind attention, and thank you again, Director General. Thank you very much. Thank you.